What is your heart's journey? For motivational speaker and reboot specialist Dianne Bischoff James, she didn't know until a harsh but honest interaction with renowned intuitive Sonia Choquette turned her life upside down and put her journey on the right track. Shortly after that jolting encounter, Dianne realized that she would have to do a full life reboot or come back to this planet and do it all over again. Now she helps others reboot their own lives, and as she explains, the process, although intense, can be equally fun and gratifying. Well, today I am thrilled to have someone on the show who I consider not only a colleague, but a friend. We met just about 2 years ago, and we have been friends, and I think in a way, kindred spirits ever since. I'm talking about Dianne Bischoff James, life reboot specialist and author of the book, The Brass Ring, Change Your Life Course Now. And that's what you did back in February, I believe, of 2000. You began the journey to change your life course after a meeting with renowned intuitive Sonia Choquette. Tell us about that meeting, Dianne, and the unexpected turn your life took right after that.
Well, that meeting was actually a birthday gift that I decided to give myself. I'd had some very synchronistic events happen a week before, and two people just random people who did not even know each other, but they were both mutual friends of mine, said, you know what, you probably should go see this woman. Her name is Sonia. Sonia Choquette, she was in Chicago, actually in Andersonville at the time, and they said, she's a great psychic. Why don't you go see her? Now, I hadn't seen a lot of psychics before, but I thought that was really strange. I had heard this message twice in such close proximity of time. And so I decided to go see her actually as a gift. And it was a birthday present. It was actually on my birthday. I was 38 years old and, went downtown, trudged through the middle of February snow in Chicago. And I really thought that she was going to tell me that I was, the cat's meow, that everything was perfect and that my life was fantastic and was only going to get better. That was my expectation because, I'd had my own business. I felt like I had done everything right according to the rules that I had been set up when I was a kid. Get a big job, get a good education. So I went to Northwestern. I had my own company. There, I always knew you had a big family. So I had 3 kids, and I also had a house across from the lake in Chicago. So I felt like I was really fortunate in a way that I had all these material possessions, and I had a cute, Saab convertible and everything. And so I was tooling around in my little red car, and I went to see Sonia and sat in her little office in her home, because at the time, this was when she only had, I think, 1 or 2 books out at that point. And she started off the reading just by kind of studying my chart a little bit, and then all of a sudden her head starts to shake. And she has curly hair, and so her curls are like bobbing up and down. And I'm looking at her, and she kind of looked a little like she was going a little convulsive-y, She was like shaking her head and kind of going, oh my goodness. And she's like, you are completely off track. She goes, everything about your life is wrong. Oh my God. And if you don't hurry up and grab at the real brass ring, which became the name of the book, she goes, it's going to be too late for you. And I kind of just sat there and I looked at her like, what are you talking about? I have what you're supposed to get, right? I have the stuff, I have the car, I have the big house, I have, all these demanding clients. I work 24/7. And I really was in complete and utter shock. So for 1 hour, she completely undressed me. She said, everything about your life is wrong. She's like, wrong guy. She goes,
oh boy, that's a big one.
Yeah. She goes, this is like a fraternal relationship. She's like, you're like hanging out with your girlfriend. And I couldn't really disagree, And she said, you have the wrong career. Even though I had my own business, my own successful marketing business, she said, you're supposed to be an actor, an author, a teacher, and a healer.
Oh my gosh.
And I wasn't doing any of it, none of it at all. Although I'd loved acting since I was a kid, I had loved everything about metaphysics, everything about spirituality, everything about philosophy. That was everything I had studied kind of growing up on my own and partly in school. And I had a background in psychology, but she said, you are so completely off track. It's as if you went up a ladder, you climbed up the ladder, got to the top, and then you looked over and you're on the wrong ladder. And so she kind of beat me senseless for this entire session. And she's like, you're a smother mother. She's like, you have these kids, but and I was always there. It's right. Even when I wasn't having a meeting, I was at school. I had to do playground duty. I ran the plays. I was a cheerleading coach. I've been a volleyball coach, even though I don't play volleyball. They don't know that. But I was everywhere doing everything. And she said, you're smothering your kids. And she goes, quite frankly, you're clinically and chronically depressed.
Oh my goodness, that had to be just the shock of your life. Well, she dressed you down for sure.
Yeah, she cut me to my knees. And the funny thing is, I hadn't told anybody that I was sucking down Prozac like there was no tomorrow. So when she called me out on that one, I literally felt the blood drain out of my face because it wasn't talked about back then. Even if you were taking antidepressants, nobody knew, but I felt in some ways as if somebody had literally for the first time seen what was going on in the inner core. Mm-hmm. And then, now this is the part that she was too polite. She didn't bring this part up. But I was also almost, morbidly obese. I was 190 pounds. And I was sitting in her office in a nice business suit, but I was clearly overweight too. And wanting to cry every day, so I was sucking down Prozac so I wouldn't be in tears. And I'd always loved theater. I'd loved performing arts. And she said, I can tell you this, and I don't get to tell this to anybody else. And I always take that little tone because she has a really cute voice, but when she gets going, it's pretty harsh, And she's like, you're just like your father. She said, you're just following in your father's and your mother's footsteps. She goes, you're not even a human being. You're not who you really are at all. You're barely even a human being. And she said, and you were supposed to pursue all the things that you're really good at. She goes, and I can tell you this, and I don't get to tell this to anybody else. She goes, you're going to do really well at being an actor. She said, and most people I can't say that to, but with you I can. She goes, you will have a nice little career for yourself, and you're going to pursue these things in this order. And she went on and on. Okay, you're going to be an actor, and then you've got to write your stories every day because people are going to really love your stories, and that's the part that's going to really be helpful to others, these crazy stories that you're going to have. And I kind of just sat there the whole time, gripping on to I was like this velvet plush chair, and my fingers are digging into this chair, looking at this woman, thinking, how in God's green earth am I going to redo everything?
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, she obviously just laid it on so thick. I mean, I don't know if someone were that blunt with me, that consistently how I would respond. But were you getting a sense that this was what she was saying you needed to pay attention to? I mean, right at that moment, or were you thinking this woman's, she's really off? What was your first sort of gut impression of what she was saying?
I wanted to jump across the table and start choking her. To be honest with you.
Can you be a little clearer?
I mean, it was I hate the messenger, I'm just going to slay the messenger, because it was kind of like, I felt, how dare you sit here in your beautiful Victorian house and seem to have your act together and be writing books and doing whatever, all the things she was doing at the time. I was thinking, how dare you tell me that my life is garbage? So at first I felt like offended and angry, and I think it went straight to the place of righteous indignation.
Right?
And I'm like, no, this can't be. But at the same time, it hurt so much. Yeah. So I had both. I had that going on. I had the anger and also the incredible hurt. And then I think I went straight to shame, because I finished the session. I asked her only one question. It was like I barely spoke the entire time. And before she left, I said, okay, well, let me ask you something. I said, you're telling me this huge ominous warning, like it's too late. I said, well, what happens if I don't do this stuff? Mm-hmm. And she goes, well, Diane, I'm telling you, you're here to find your heart this lifetime. And if you don't, which means in all areas of your life, she goes, and you're going to have to come right back and do this whole thing all over again. Mm. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean come back? I wasn't quite sure, what exactly she was talking about. She goes, you're going to die. She goes, let me clarify. You're going to die, and then you're going to pass, and you're going to have to repeat this entire lifetime because you're not getting it. And I thought, okay, that was the one thing that clicked in. And the kind of, in a way, it was a nice thing, because I've always been kind of strong-minded in that there was no way that I was going to sit there and think that this lifetime, even if it was a mistake, there was no way I was going to come back and do it over. So that was kind of the, oh, heck no.
That was the kicker. Yeah,
that was the
I gotcha.
kicker.
Yeah.
It was kind of the upside of it.
Yeah.
Like if somebody gave me a warning, and this was as if, someone's like, ooh, someone comes in and goes, look, everything's wrong. You got to fix it. And I thought, okay, well, fine. If it's wrong, I'm in the middle of my life. I've made a complete, obviously, mess up until this point. Mess according to the spiritual side, not mess according to the materialistic side. And they're saying, now you've got X number of years to fix this thing. Mm-hmm. So I started counting my days, and I figured I had about like 11,000 days to straighten it all out. So I was thinking, if I want to chill out by the time I'm like mid 70s or so, I had about like 11,650 days or something like that. And really, you know what? It was didn't seem like that much time. So I knew I had to kind of move it or lose it, get into this high gear, and fix every single solitary aspect of my life.
Wow.
And after I stopped being depressed and crying about it, I got very serious. I took it very seriously.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had a pure purge in the strictest sense of the word. And, as I listened to the story, I had no idea it was that intense. I mean, I knew just sort of on a peripheral level what the story was, but that's pretty heavy. And it seems like Sonia was her voice was the gift. She mentioned, she made reference to the heart and living from the heart. And I've heard you say everything you have done after this turning point, you said you've done them purely from the heart. I want you to elaborate on that a little bit. How is that so?
Well, I think, and this was so interesting that you bring this up. Sonia had said, okay, everyone has a different mission. Some people are here just to rest. Mm-hmm. And really it's kind of a rejuvenation lifetime. And they don't have to work that hard. Maybe they have, I don't know, maybe they are just supporting some other people in their lifetime, but they don't have to go through the trenches. And then she said, some people are here to find their heart, which was supposedly my master mission. And the funny thing is when she said it, this weird image popped up in my mind. And I always think of Snow White, in that the huntsman comes to the queen and he's like, I've brought you a heart. And he puts it in a box. And I kept thinking, mine's in a box, but it's not a nice box like the huntsman has to give the queen. Of course, we know it's the boar's heart. That isn't Snow White's heart. She lives, of course. But my heart was in this like steel box where there was no access to it whatsoever. It was strictly being programmed, strictly being following the rules, being a good soldier in life, but not experiencing anything. I didn't want to feel. That's why I took the Prozac. I didn't want to. If I didn't feel good, I ate, because eating is the only thing that gave me that one little lift. But of course, we know that how is that like the most horrible cycle in the world? You sit there and you eat because you're feeling bad and stressed and depressed, and you eat, and then less than 10, 15 minutes later, although that initial sensation feels good, wallowing in shame and blame and guilt and horror that you just ate too much already, and now you're going to gain some weight tomorrow because you just did that. So it was that awful cycle of taking 1 second to self-soothe, and then knowing that I was going to have to beat myself senseless in my mind because I just continued to eat and eat and eat, because it was the only thing that made me feel good. So my only connection to heart at that point was through food, and the relationship was very fraternal. It was a working relationship. Like I felt like we were running a B&B or something. And so there was no heart in that.
Yeah. Okay, so that was then, and this is now, I want to fast forward to now and then maybe kind of revisit and juxtapose, because I think it's great for the audience to hear a transition that can be made in a lifetime and at your age. I know you've made mention of that. So now, or, after that sort of critical moment, that epiphany, you started living from your heart. And, we hear that and we kind of think of it figuratively, well, of course, or poetically. But what does that mean? And I want to put a little emphasis on this, Dianne, because we're hearing more discussion about living from the heart versus the head. When we were kids, what did our parents say? Think with your head, not with your heart. Very interesting. We're talking now about the heart having its own intelligence. It's even more than an emotional center. So, A, would you concur with that? And B, are you gleaning intelligence from your heart, do you think?
Absolutely. And I do believe that the heart actually is the center of the core and the pranic tube, that you have this central tube that actually goes through us, that connects from heaven to earth. And the heart is right in the middle of it. And the heart is, as you mentioned, not only is the heart intelligent, but it's also intuitive. It's also connected. It's also your source of compassion. It's your source of love. It's the source of joy. And so often, as you mentioned, as kids, we were growing up where it was, and I just feel like we were soldiers. Follow the rules, get whatever they told you to get, do whatever they told you to do, be quiet until someone talks to you. And, and this is the generation where we're the 40-somethings, 50-somethings, 60-somethings, and we were good kids, or there was a punishment for that. So we followed those rules. Now, I think there has been a big shift where there's more awareness that this journey is from the heart, which I'd like to expand to say your soul's journey is here, which with these bigger missions to, and part of it, and this is one of the teachings that I've had since I met with Sonia. I've had the chance to tour all over the country, meet with people in probably at least 15 states so far, and to really look at where people are off track. And when I have the opportunity to speak to people and hear so many of these amazing stories of people who know that the heart is off track because they'll say, I feel like I'm not clear about my purpose, or I know what I want to do and I'm not doing it. So they have taken this purpose that their heart is aware of, because the heart, here's the funny thing, Alexis, I like to cut to the chase.
Please.
The heart will not invest in compromises.
I love it.
Period, end of story. So when I'm sitting and traveling all over the country, and just you and I were both together at Conscious Life, and then people come and talk to me, and they'll say, I want so much to, and someone just talked to me about to have like the best candle company in the world. And this woman was going on and on about how she wanted to expand it beyond scents, but to make it so that it could actually have, this dynamic experience in different colors, and she was smart enough and clever enough and talented enough to come up with the new version of Yankee Candle or whatever it might be for her. And she was stuck. And she's like, no, but I'm sitting doing this horrible, boring job. I'm in accounting and I hate it. And at night I want to get to my candle factory in the basement, but I'm too terrified to try to go forward and to make this into something that would be a living for me. And, I just said to her, your heart's not going to invest in a compromise. Her eyes open up and she looks at me, and I said, so no matter how much time you spend doing this other work, which is great, doesn't mean quit your day job. It just means you really have to go into this experience. You're trying to be a sensory person and contributing to the world with new sensory experiences. That's where your heart wants to be. And she starts to cry. She's like, oh my God, you're right. It's all, you're talking to me all about multiple sensory experiences, which of course, we know brings us up. That takes our vibration and it raises a vibration up. So there she was saying, okay, that's my heart's journey. And then we talked about her relationship and the different aspects of how that's, whether it's connected on a heart level or not. And so the heart really is the core of all of this.
It sure
is. Not only for the purpose, but for your relationships, for your contribution. And then I think, of course, for the essence, your essence.
Right. I want you to repeat, excuse me, Dianne, for the audience. The heart does not invest in compromise, correct?
That is correct.
I love it. That one's going to go down for the record in writing. And so I'm going to add one to it. The heart does not invest in compromise, and the subconscious can never take a joke. I want to transition there.
I love that.
Because I think there's a connection somehow. That's kind of what came to me. You got two things going on here. And so this brings me to the power of self-talk. We know that words spoken audibly are extremely powerful. We know that. But so are the ones we repeat silently in our heads. We all do it, particularly when they're sustained over a period of time. And that can work either, as we know, for positive or negative. Just how powerful would you say these words or concepts are? And I'm bringing this up at this point in the conversation because this woman, Dianne, like so many others, are clearly talking to themselves. There's a mantra that's going on in their head saying, I love my candle making company, but I can't do it because. And all of that self-talk is feeding the subconscious. The subconscious can't take a joke and thus will manifest the reality of where that person is until Dianne comes into their lives and tells them about the heart doesn't invest in compromise. So that was a mouthful. Get what I'm saying?
I love it because it really ties right back into, I think, one of the fundamental core principles, which is stinking thinking. And it always makes me laugh because it goes back to Saturday Night Live, and he goes, "That's just stinking thinking." Well, my stinking thinking, and this is just going back to going back to sitting in Sonia's office, my stinking thinking was so enormous at the time. It filled my entire life at the time, back then when I was almost 40 years old. Everything was based on fear, or what you said, I can't do this because all these things are going to happen, the horror, the terror, everyone's going to die. And usually the funny thing is the stinking thinking isn't ours. It doesn't really belong to us. Very often it came from the program that we had growing up. Mm-hmm. It could have come from mom, dad. It could have come from an authority figure. It could have come from some traumatic experience that you had. And it's based on this root where you made a conclusion or a decision, usually young, usually in childhood up until about, maybe 13, 14 years old, and you made a decision about something, whether it be about your lack of ability to be loved or lack of ability to be authentic and be really you, because if you're really you, everyone would reject you. And then, and this is the part I love, and I'm only going to say this lovingly because it is kind of funny, but most of us believe kind of at the end of the day, if someone really knew who we really were inside, they would run screaming.
You think?
Well, I think, I do, because I talk to people all over the country about this, and they'll say, I have this amazing technique that I've come up with that is a combination of EFT, but it also adds in ancestral clearing. It adds in all this different types of techniques. And usually what happens is there was a decision somebody made about themselves, and I'll say, okay, well, when this event happened and you were put in this traumatic situation, what is it that you told yourself? Mm-hmm. And usually what blurts forward is, I'm stupid, or no one's going to love me for who I am, or some really deep core message that feeds the stinking thinking. And then what happens, as you said, Alexis, bringing in now to the verbal component of that, because that little message seeded so many different things, it comes through your thoughts, and you're thinking, well, no one's ever going to love me anyway, so I might as well stick with, this guy who's not treating me nicely. And therefore your actions and your words are, I guess I deserve to be, have nobody treat me well, and therefore it expands, and your words are, and then your actions. And the weirdest part of this entire strange irony of life is that we work so hard to prove that our messages that we've told ourselves are right.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I agree with you.
And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we're accurate on these stinking thinking messages. So isn't that the ultimate irony?
Isn't that the ultimate irony?
Isn't that the ultimate irony?
It's the ultimate irony, but it's also, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to your anecdotes, your stories, not only of your life, but those that you come in contact with, those that I come in contact with, those that we've all heard about, and there seems to be a common thread of undermining the self. And how did humanity get to this point? We could, as I always say, go off on a tangent there. There's so many things we could, but I think it's worth kind of touching on a little bit. How did this get to be such a ubiquitous phenomenon of undermining potential? I have some answers, but I'd like to hear maybe what you have to say about that.
Wow.
Or some opinions.
That could go back so far. That could go way, way, way back in that there's a lot of theories on where there was a shift, but supposedly at the time of the Atlanteans, if we want to go all the way back, there was this very powerful society that was self-fulfilled, and had contribution and love at the center of it, and was also able to connect our entire DNA and all the strands, and we were able to communicate in many different ways that we can't even imagine. And why exactly that fell, how exactly that fell, and why we came back as limited and self-destructive and destructive of others and destructive of our own society. I don't know. I mean, we could play on that. There are a lot of different theories as to why that came about, but I do believe that this is the first time, and since the shift came up, in 12, was it 12, 12, 12, and all that, when we were all trying to shift, is that I think for the first time now, we're able to actually bring the awareness to such a high level, release, acknowledge and release what is holding us back at the core, and to finally, not only for our generation, the ones who are midlife and beyond, but then to actually bring that back to the younger people, to the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings. I believe we're now finally able to scrub the inside, which is the way I like to look at it. I think we're finally at the point where there's enough tools and techniques out there and enough healing available where we will not need to be operating out of the program that says, and usually there's 3 buttons to that. The one button is about love for self. The other button is about love from others in the tribe. And then the third button is about love and support from the universe. And those are the 3 things that I have another book coming up, and I'm going to expound on that at length. But those are the 3 areas in which our operating systems have started from. It's lack, loss, and, lack of fulfillment, basically. And so in any of the people that I'm able to share their journeys and opportunities and talk about their growth, we go right back to those 3 core buttons. Because somewhere in those, and we all have a different combination. Some people have no problem with the scarcity. Some people have not as big an issue with love from tribe and love from family and others. And some people don't have a big issue with love of self, but it's usually kind of a palette. And each of us have come in with certain buttons on this palette that get pushed down. And we then operate, unfortunately, we operate and make sure that we fulfill those, make sure those buttons stay pushed so that you don't get a great relationship, or you really never get fulfilled with feeling like you're safe and secure in this world, and that you're always operating out of scarcity, not only financially, but in many cases it could come materialistic, in some cases it can come in other ways. And then some people have the area of tribe, which is that no one's ever really going to like me. They're going to run away screaming if they know who I am, and that the tribe's going to reject me, and I'm going to end up all alone. So kind of boiling it all down, if we were able to, and I believe that this is our future, this is our utopia in the future, we're able to uncover what got pushed, we're able to heal all those traumas, and wherever we made choices about ourselves that were unhealthy or not supportive or not loving, getting back to the heart, and then we're able to heal it and move forward and manifest in a magnificent way, which is to have these newer, fulfilled human beings walking around that are on purpose, on track with their life. So life is feeling strong and fulfilled. They're on track with their heart, so that their heart is enlivened and loving and supportive and able to not only contribute to self but contribute to others. And then they're also on this massively fun track of playing with the world of manifestation.
I want to talk about that because yes, you definitely didn't mean to cut you off, but that's a juicy point that I want you to elaborate on, and that's playing with life. And I've seen this in you, Dianne, and in the conversations that we've had, but I've also heard you talk about this, that you look at life as somewhat of a game, in a positive way, of course. And so playing with it, igniting creative imagination to consciously manifest, that's what we're going to call this, conscious manifesting in the law of attraction. Would you say that underneath the core, even before this sort of reboot that you had, that was always sort of your, that was sort of there always, but just dormant, that you knew you had the ability to play with life and make things happen? Looking back in retrospect, what do you think?
Oh, in hindsight, I felt in some areas powerful, in some areas. And I was able to, and I look at it like a chemistry lab. Where, it was really fun when you're a teenager and you put on your goggles and you're sitting here and you add this little one liquid to another liquid and all of a sudden the thing's bubbling up in your in your beakers, and I always thought that was really cool. So I look at it kind of like a chemistry lab, and that's where I started having more fun. I felt like when I started to reboot myself, I was able to heal the inside, and I started there. And then what happened is this sense of mastery somehow kind of I would say it was able to sink in at more of a cellular level. And the funny thing is that I think, okay, well, the core belief is what you think about, you bring about. That's the fundamental belief of law of attraction in the simplest terms. And it's really not only what you think about, but of course it moves up in scale. So not only what you think about, what you talk about, what you pay attention to, and absolutely the highest level, which people don't really understand, is what you write down. Because, and let me tell you why, the physical, our job is to play in this world called the earth, and to manifest what we want. But once it's physically real, which means you can see it on a piece of paper and you took your hand or you typed it or whatever, and you see it down there in front of you, you now have made it real for the first time in this world, in this dynamic. And this is the dynamic in which we're playing. So not only what you talk about, but the one thing that we work on a lot in some of the workshops we do is to get so specific and clear that you write everything down exactly the way you want it in the specific details. Of course, you leave a little room. The universe has to morph and play with it.
That's right.
But you get to be very clear about the qualities that you would like. And one of my really fun examples, if it's okay if I bring it up at this time.
Absolutely.
I started playing with all this. Okay, if what I think about and focus on, pay attention to is all coming my way, then I better make it good. And so I started getting really fun with this. Okay, well, I said, you know what I want? I want a box of chocolates. And
life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Sorry, I had to put that.
But it's exactly like that. And I said it before the movie. I was playing with this before that movie ever came out. But the fun part is, I said, okay, I'm not going to buy them. I refused to go out in the store and buy them. I wasn't going to go hunting them down. I wanted to see if the universe would deliver them to me, just purely for fun. So I wrote down everything I wanted. They had to be Belgium. They had to be delicious. I really I'm kind of into fancy chocolate, so I wanted them to be, of the Godiva quality or better. And I started writing down what the fillings would be. And then I said, okay, went outside, because I'm playing now. I'm playing in my little lab. I went outside, put my hands up. No one was watching me, thank God, because of course they'd think I'm crazy. And I'm looking up to the sky on a beautiful sunny day, and I'm like, okay, I want a box of chocolates. Please bring me these box of chocolates. I really don't care when they come. I don't care how they come, but I just want to see if you're listening and if you'll respond. And then I did a little extra step, because I know that this manifesting in the physical realm was really important. So I found a picture, like in a magazine, and I cut it out, and and this is funny. The daytimers, remember when daytimers were?
I sure did. We're dating ourselves.
back then when we used daytimers, I put it in my daytimer and I kind of taped it up so I would just see it occasionally. And I swear within 2 weeks, I'm at my home office, I'm working, the doorbell rings, and lo and behold, there's the FedEx guy. And I get this box, and he's like, I have a package for you. I'm like, okay, thanks. Take it. I was not expecting anything. Open this up, and inside it, I swear, was a beautiful white box with the gold medallions of Godiva chocolates.
Oh, my goodness.
And I open it up like, are you kidding me? I got a FedEx box of Godiva chocolates. And I'm looking, trying to figure out, okay, where did they come from? Who sent them to me? Was this a joke? Because I didn't tell anybody that this was an experiment I was doing, because I didn't want to feed it or, have my fiance at the time do something like deliver them to me. So I look inside the box, and it was from a bank, from a mortgage company, and it said, congratulations on your anniversary, Dianne Divine. And I'm thinking, okay, obviously there's a woman named Dianne Divine. It's not me. But I got her chocolates.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, and I was like, darn it, these aren't for me. And so
But
then I
yeah.
had that. Then I was like, okay, do I call the company? Do I just eat them? So my conscience won, and I called the company up and I said, look, I got this box of chocolates for a woman named Dianne Divine. Now my name is Diane, but they're not for me. And they told my name, and they said, well, Diane, they said, enjoy your box of chocolates. We will send Miss Divine another one. It was her old address at that house, and we will find her at her new address. So enjoy your Godivas. And I'm like, I felt like, seriously, I was like, did the universe just say enjoy the box of chocolates to me? And so this was so funny because I was crying, laughing, and of course snarfing, just sucking down those chocolates at the time.
And let me just say for the record, folks, Dianne Divine, and now I know your alter ego, visited my home just a few weeks ago, and to this day, because my husband and I are not big chocolate eaters, you know what she brought as a little housewarming? The best chocolate ever ice cream. I was just so she's telling the truth. She loves chocolate. How could the universe not miss that message? That is just priceless. Okay, we got to go back a little bit. This is I'm going to go into my chem lab as soon as I get off this call with you. So this is just magnificent. And I truthfully, I have heard these sorts of stories before, but it never ceases ever to amaze me how the universe works. You write this down, right? So you're making it tangible. And I love the way, Dianne, you talk about how in order to sort of set the template for something manifesting in the physical world, you've got to do something that sort of mirrors that physicality. And writing down is a tangible process. So you wrote it down, you put it away, right? You walked outside. Tell us again. Give us a little, because I know people are going to want to try this.
Here are some of the steps. First of all, it always starts with clarity. You have to be clear and specific.
Yes.
And here's the funny thing, because people will say to me, and I'll just tell you a little bit about what not to do so that you don't go down this road. But some people say, I just want this person or my wife to be happy. Mm-hmm. And I'll of course always coach and say, look, you can only want and manifest for yourself because you are the power source for you. You are not in somebody else's circle. They're not in your circle. So I have these 14 shortcuts for happy living. I'm going to just mention them now because they're very helpful also in manifesting. But one of the rules is you've got a circle. It goes around you. You put your arms out. It's about 5 feet. That's what you have to work with. That is where your power comes from. And I always say it's like a knocker ball. Those big knocker balls they have now, you can like run and knock into people and roll around. That's what you have to work with. So you stay within your circle. You get clear and specific. You can be specific on the details. Now, you don't get to control the how. Mm-hmm. How it shows up is not up to you. But what it is you want and being very clear and specific is up to you. So as long as it's like, okay, I want this, and I do this. I did this to manifest my fiance, who, Alexis, I know you do know. I know it sounds funny. I wrote a list so clear and specific, and I like to use it as an example because it kind of illustrates the point. I wanted someone who was taller than me. I wanted someone who, I'm okay, blonde or brown hair, I don't care. I wanted a certain intelligence and maybe a certain education level. And then I wanted somebody who, could dance, or at least they didn't have to be a great dancer, but they had to be willing to, because I love dancing. So I wanted someone who was willing to get out on a dance floor with me. And I wanted someone who had, this is really funny because I'd had a lot of, when I became, I always say it's my cougar dating phase. I went through a whole phase where I was like, I separated and we ended the relationship in a very healthy way. I would say it's a healthy divorce. Mm. And then I went into this phase where I was able to date, and I met a lot of wild people on that road, and that's all in the book. But one of the things happened, and in part of my list, and the reason I bring it up is I actually went out with somebody who had a box for a table. And had an air mattress for a bed. So I was like, okay, I don't want that. So I wrote down, has to have at least a couple pieces of furniture, and I really would like him to have a car. But, not everybody in the city has a car. So I said, after that, I put optional, so I got really clear. And then the funny thing is, and then I let go. You have to put it, you need to keep it in a place, whether it's a wish box or it could be it could be somewhere you see, I like to say passive observation, so that you're not staring at it every day, but you do know where it is, and maybe it's tucked into your favorite book, or maybe it's somewhere where you're just going to take a look at it occasionally. So you remind yourself. And so you put in this place of passive observation, and that's the second step. And then you have to state it. And this is the other part. You have to use your words as well. So whenever you have the opportunity, which sounds weird, but whenever it's normal and healthy, you tell everybody what you're up to. And because people are also helping you manifest, it's all part of the black hole, that circle which brings it to you. And so I would say, yeah, I'd love to meet somebody who's a partner. I'm really looking forward to, having a relationship that would be long term. Okay. And so I started being very clear and specific with my words as well. And then lo and behold, again, for me, it's always about 2 weeks. A couple weeks later, I had this guidance. I went by a tent, and it was an alumni thing, and it said Northwestern Alumni Event. And I went, hey, I should go to one of those. It was like it got me. It got my attention. Went to one of those events, and I met somebody who every single solitary item on my list he checked off. To the point where I was trying to ditch him at one point, and I said, okay, because I wasn't really tied to anybody. And I said, well, if I meet people, that's great. But I was sitting at dinner going like, oh my God, you are checking off every item on my list. And everything he would say, I was like, check, 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 check. Weird. And then I'm like, I can't get rid of this one because he hit every item on my list. And as it turned out, we ended up dating from that point on, from our first dinner. And we're still together now. I think we're going into 8 years. And
I know this person. He's really nice.
He's a sweetheart.
He is a nice guy. Yes,
he's a good guy. But here's the only caveat. You need to make sure you're clear about what you want, because if you don't put it down, sometimes the universe, I always think they have a sense of humor. They put some stuff in that you didn't put in your list. So he's not from this country, which I didn't put. I wanted someone from the U.S. He's Dutch. And so it's been good for me, but it's like I had to learn a little bit more about another culture and learn, they kind of have different family dynamics and things like that. So if there's something you really want, all I'm saying is make sure your list is as clear, as specific as possible, because sometimes the universe is pretty funny.
Oh, I think it's true. It's, the universe can be a trickster, but always a teacher. But I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here for a moment. Not really, but a point that you made that I think it's borne out here. You said initially that, well, I guess what you said is the how is what you leave the universe to do. But what I really take that as, Dianne, is I think it's imperative that we always leave a little bit of space. I have a little phrase that says, have goals, but let go of expectation. Because sometimes when you have too specific of an expectation, you may inhibit something even bigger, better, and more different to come in. And so perhaps that was that little piece of extra. You got to learn about a different culture et al. So I don't know, just a thought.
No, I love that. And I really appreciate you bringing it up, because I've always found that the way that this manifestation process works best is if you focus on the important qualities. And some things are deal breakers for, let's be honest. Some things are deal breakers. Like, for example, if somebody, I really didn't want to have someone at the time who had, well, I was really clear on specific addictions. I didn't want them, I wanted them to be able to go out and have a good time, because I had an addictive relationship in the past. That was a deal breaker for me. So if somebody had an active addiction, that was something that was not on my list at the time, and I was kind of clear about that. So if there are things that are deal breakers for you, you can definitely put them on your list. But then I leave, as you said, which is beautiful, I leave a lot of space. Focus on the qualities of what you're looking for, because you don't get to sit there and craft the face or craft sometimes even the vehicle. Like if I'll say, okay, I'm looking for a new car. I'd like it to be, within this budget. I really want it to drive well and to last for 10, 15 years when, I want to put 100,000 miles on it, and then you kind of leave some space in there. If you're okay on the color, if you don't care if it's, if it's a Toyota or a Ford, or, if you're really kind of flexible on certain things, and then you give the universe the chance to use that space to come up with kind of a creative outcome, because it really all goes into that manifestation funnel. And this is the part that they don't share. usually when you are manifesting, other people's input is going, we're all manifesting at the same time. So the hybrid comes in because we're all co-creating. And in the co-creation, it comes out maybe sometimes a one-off or a two-off of anything you could have imagined. And in most cases, like you said, it's for your own best interest, or it's a learning experience, or sometimes I just think it's because it was what was there at that moment in time. And sometimes in the future, if you wanted X and you're willing to wait 6 months, you might have a Y at the end of 6 months down the road. So all that plays into these. And that's why I call it a chemistry lab.
It is. I think that's perfect. Beautifully said.
Drop of that.
Absolutely. Listen, I think, my dear, you are a born manifester. I really do. And this is a question I want to ask. Do you think that there's some people that have more of a natural inclination for conscious manifesting than others?
I have to. My feeling on that is that we are all master manifestors at our core. The only thing that will inhibit us is when we have self-doubt or doubt in the universe and its ability, or have such kind of maybe some rigidity to our thoughts and our beliefs. So a lot of it's about just opening up and relaxing in your experiences. And I love to challenge the universe. So that, and part of it's the lightness. If you can put that lightness back into it and say, okay, just another quick example, I was, having my own self-doubt, which I get sometimes. It's been a long road. I've been touring for about a year and a half now. And sometimes I get, what am I doing? I go through is this working? Is this okay? I was going through a little moment of self-doubt. So I said to the universe, show me. I want you to show me once a week that what I'm working on is helpful and that people are getting, it's the right path for me, and that there's a benefit to this for others, because that's really what I want to do. And it was amazing. So I did it at I was having one of those low moment days. I don't know whether it was just funky and off. And again, within 7 days, I have a random email that comes across that said, I met you at a show. I was in Ohio. I just want to let you know, when you talked to me, it changed my life. And it went on and on and on. And I thought, I just looked up and I'm like, thank you.
I love it.
And then, so you can ask your team. I look at it like a matching grant. You ask your team for what you want, and then your team, which is your support from the other side, which we really can't see. A lot of us can't see them, but they're right there. And you just say, can you please, I would like this from you. Can you please show me support for this? Can you please show me the answer to this question I have? Can you please give me some indication on direction, path, experiences? And I believe it's their job to respond. So as long as you have this openness and this flexibility and kind of that space and willing to float through it a little bit, it's a matching grant. So as long as your energy, effort, and all this is going in one direction, it's their job to match you at a equal or higher level. And I like it when it's at the higher level.
Right, of course. I love
if it's a little higher is always better.
Yeah, you have such a way with words. It's a matching grant. The audience knows we have a sort of companion post that goes on the website, and I put show notes, and sometimes I'll put memorable quotes. This is going to be chock full of them. I love it. Listen, we don't have that much time left. I know. I knew it would go quickly because Dianne and I gab all the time, and it's just a wonderful thing. But such a rich discussion that I hope people can extract something from. But before we end, now, you and I talked about this. We've talked about this a lot. I want to switch gears a bit. I actually want to take a full 180-degree turn because, Dianne has a lot of stories that she's shared with me that she hasn't shared with others. And Dianne, you know where I'm going with this. This is a story that you told me when we initially met. I can't believe, it seems like it's been longer, but only 2 years ago in San Mateo, California for, I think it was the New Life Expo conference. And you told me this story. I've been bugging you ever since to let me record this for my own work and research of, let's just call it the aspect that I call the field of high strangeness. You know what I'm talking about? So I don't know how or if we can tie this into what we've been talking about today. Maybe we can. Let's see if we can. But first, can you share the story with us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And this is where it's nice to have you, Alexis. You know a lot of the stories that don't always make it into print. I like
so I'm blowing up your spot.
No, I like to bring it up because I saw something that I was, it wasn't until I had this experience that I really, I'm open to everything on spirituality. I'm open to everything metaphysical. I'm open to everything in this plane of existence. But it wasn't until I had this experience that it really confirmed that there really is, as much as there is a lightness, there also is a darkness, and that's the part that was interesting to me. I had one of my relationships when I was single was with a person who had a very, very, very strong active addiction, and it's one of the favorite stories in the book. But he took me from this place of lightness and manifestation and positivity and growth to looking at the darkness of life that I've never ever seen before. It involved everything from getting arrested. He was incarcerated. He had things happening to his body that were just horrible, and it was all because of his addiction and because of all the terrible things that went along with that addiction. But once he went to his mother's house, and his family was had a very strange dynamic. The mother was very strong, very controlling, and they too probably were participating in other addictions. But he went out to go fix something, and he was in the backyard, and his mom made him come back and said, "You've got to fix our telephone system." So he tried. He went out. He was an electrical engineer. He actually had multiple masters. He was brilliant. And he came back in, and I was out there with him in the yard, and I said, "Are you an electrician, or are you a telephone guy?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Then how are you going to fix this?" He's like, "I don't know, but my mom said I had to." And this is a 44-year-old man. I'm like, okay, well, I sat there watching him for a while, and then we came back into the kitchen, and he goes, "Mom," and she was just sitting there, and it was kind of like dark room, dark kitchen. It was almost, 5 or 6, and it was getting to be dark outside. And she had one light over her head, and she snapped her head, and she looked at him, and she goes, "How dare you?" And I swear her entire face turned gray. Her eyes turned black. I saw blackness in the center of her eyes, and it was as if her skin turned a color, like the color of death. It's the only color I can think to describe it. It's like that sallowy, whitish gray color. And it was as if, weirdly, like she was possessed almost by an entity, a creature, a serpent, I don't know what it was, and I just stared at her because I'd walked in the door. He looked at her, I looked at her, and then in less than, like another couple seconds, it all went back to looking like this older woman who was very sick and had like a lot of veins on her face, so kind of the blood came back, and I just stood there in the doorway, and I thought, I think I've just seen something that's not of this world. I don't know whether it was extraterrestrial. I don't know if it was serpent. I don't know what it was. But for the first time ever, I felt like I'd seen, a reptilian kind of experience. And I didn't know what to say. I thought at first, and this was the middle of the day. We were just outside in the yard. We were fully functioning. There was nothing that at the time, my boyfriend's name was Jeff. There was nothing Jeff or I that we've been doing that would make us have any false senses at that point. And I kind of backed up. I backed out the door. I literally walked outside. He followed me, and I just looked at him and I said, I don't know what I just saw, but that was not human. And he kind of just brushed it off, and he said, "Yeah, my mom's got some issues," or something like that. And I didn't know what to say to him. It's one of those things where I felt more concerned about my personal safety. So I said I had to go, and I said, "I think, why don't you come with me?" Because I was kind of concerned about his safety too. And he wasn't able to fix whatever she wanted him to fix. And I felt like a mask was dropped for one moment in time. And I never forgot it. I never forgot the look. I never forgot the color. It was as if I saw the lightness of day, and then I saw the darkness, just the absolute darkness of night, or whatever you want to call that. And I've never really shared that with anybody before, but it was something I never forgot. And I kind of call it my serpent moment, where I really felt like I saw a reptilian kind of experience within a human. Yeah. And I have not fortunately seen it since, but I did get the heck out of there, and I drove away, and I really was very reluctant to go back into that house ever since, because, and then she did, here's the weird thing, not to do the spoiler alert, but Jeff did not have, his addiction did take his life. And weirdly, his mom did pass 3 months after he or like within 3 to 6 months after he died as well. And so they had a lot of death and destruction around that family. And his father had also passed. So I think almost everyone in the family died within a really short period of time. So it was some weird synchronistic stuff.
Absolutely. Well, look, I really thought about how I wanted to fold this in, but, you and I talked about this, and again, my audience knows I do cover these sort of very elusive, high strangeness aspects to reality, not, again, because of the, God forbid, thrill factor or just the novelty of it, but Dianne, in the attempt to even just get a glimpse as to the scope of the true nature of reality, including our own potential, I think it's important to look at that spectrum to the best of our ability. And here we have, and by the way, for those of you who haven't seen Dianne, you'll certainly see her picture. She is simply stunning. She's lovely. She's not in this sort of work, what we're talking about here. So you can only imagine when she told me this story, I thought it seemed so not uncharacteristic, but atypical to the type of work you do. But that is why I wanted the audience to hear this story coming from you, because this phenomenon apparently is just as present, coexists with all these other aspects of life, and we need to be aware of them. I wouldn't go necessarily seeking them out, but I have a feeling that, all of these are little pieces to a puzzle, I see it, of what we call life. And so sometimes you have to look at the dark in order to understand how bright and brilliant the light is. And that is what, fortunately, you have entrenched yourself in, and that's the light. So I want to salute you for that. Listen, we're out of time. You got to tell us now. I just got a little heads up. You got a new website coming out, don't you? Tell us about what's happening on your calendar and your world.
Well, this weekend I will be at Victory of Light Expo. That is in Columbus, Ohio. It is an unbelievable event, and so many 10,000 people go to it. It's amazing. So I'm super excited about that. And then I'll be in Fargo, North Dakota, and that's coming up for the Edge Expo. And that is on the April, I think it's the 22nd, and let me see, I think it's the 22nd and the 23rd and the 24th. And then we have a new website coming up, and kind of developing it with the future in mind. It's going to be my name, Dianne Bischoff James, and we're going to take the name, which was Live Your Everything. It's going to be a little bit more of a tagline now, and it's going to focus on tools that help make transformation easy. And that's the one thing that I've known for, even though we talked about both the brightness of life, and then we have, of course, there's always a polar opposite. We have the brightness and we have the darkness, but my whole focus in life is to help make transformation easy in this modern world. And that's what I'm here to do.
Folks, I think if there's anyone that can pull that off, it's Dianne Bischoff James. Oh, you're fabulous. Love it, love it, love it.
And I love you too. Thank you so much for having me. It has been such a pleasure.
Likewise, Dianne. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Higher Journeys Radio. Take care. Who said manifesting can't be fun? Dianne is clear that the gifts she received, both small and large, came from her own chemistry lab of imagination and creativity. Whether it's a box of chocolates synchronistically showing up at your front door or the partner of your dreams, it's all in how you manifest. And Dianne certainly has a beautiful way of illustrating how that all happens. I encourage you to pick up a copy of Dianne's book, The Brass Ring, whose title was inspired by that ominous and life-changing meeting with Sonia Choquette. And speaking of Sonia, you may want to check out my interview back in 2014 with her as she discusses her own life-changing journey. We'll make sure to have the link to that episode listed below. Thanks as always for taking the high journey with us. Until next time, I'm your host, Alexis Brooks.